So in this fourth session of the Gonzo Ethnography, we are going to talk about an interesting subject, which is silence. And silence is exactly the opposite mode to the one that we were seeing operating in the previous session in the thesis system, where conversationalism was being promoted. Silence is also a mechanism that is used by academic authority in order to prevent being scrutinized or legitimizing their decisions based on evidence and rational debate. Silence is used in order to sustain the authority in its most autocratic forms. Is the equivalent of the Fifth Amendment. So people do not refuse to declare in order to prevent further accusations. And it's like the mafia form of academic authority, which shields administrators from responsibility and scrutiny by transferring decisions to committees, which act as pawns for the authority and issue their determinations without explanation and without discussion at the expense of an open debate and the consideration of evidence, which I believe is what an appropriate academic behavior should do. Let me now move to the slides, which I will use to present the evidence in this session. As we will see, I mean, we're going to have now 3 sessions talking about committees. Committees are obviously these mechanisms that are often used in academic life, which are basically vehicles vested with authority for the purpose of making authority itself more collegial. But what we will see in the next 3 sessions is that the reality of these practices is entirely different, and often these committees serve just as an alibi and a cover-up for the academic authority in its most autocratic and pure forms. Through the ethnography, I have collected plenty of evidence. We saw in the thesis session already one committee in action, the committee of the assignment committee between students and advisors. Now we are going to see the operation of some ad hoc committees that deal with academic content, not just kind of administrative issues, but they inform decisions on the academic content, in this case, the qualification of my courses by different subsector committees, ad hoc committees. So the story that I want to explain starts in February 2020, when after one of my seminars was oversubscribed during the Christmas break, suddenly becomes undersubscribed at the beginning of the term. And I was surprised, but until one student sent me this letter stating that due to the fact that the seminar had been denied the credit as an urbanism course, the student in particular had to sign up for another seminar to meet the required credits. And this was apparently the case also with several other students who couldn't register for my seminar because the seminar didn't have the appropriate credit, despite the fact that the previous year it did have it did count for as a credit in urbanism, because it's very much a seminar on urban ecology. I didn't give it much importance and simply developed a very successful seminar, actually, with a very small group of committed and talented students, and forgot about the matter. But then when the dean wrote to me in the summer to change the schedule and denomination of my studio for the 5th consecutive year, I decided to confront her with this matter also, not only contested to the studio, but also confronted her with this and use the occasion to tell her that my seminars, to start with, are not design seminars, even if I am a design professor, because I don't teach design through seminars. I teach design in my studio through projects. And so she then stated that she didn't have authority to decide on the qualification of seminar as technology or theory or design, and that she had to invoke the wisdom of the history and theory PhDs to elucidate this matter, arguing that that there was a rule, there was some sort of arcane rule that, to my knowledge, has never been voted by the faculty, that requires that the seminar qualifications are run through these subsector committees. And I was surprised about this, that the dean wouldn't have authority to decide where a seminar belonged, to what area of knowledge did the seminar belong. And I thought it was an interesting question, because it basically was asking faculty from different subsectors to define the borders between areas of knowledge within the discipline, which I think is not a particularly useful thing to do in an age where probably we need to tend to transdisciplinarity and a little bit more of a flexible form of the classification of knowledge. Nevertheless, she formed these two subsector committees to classify my two seminars, and I asked her to send me the composition of the committees and the question that she was posing to them. So what happened then is that she didn't respond to me with her question to the subsector committees, which, to my knowledge, have not been formed ever before. And I asked Mónica Ponce de León to give me examples, and then she answered that these committees do not issue reports and simply make the decision. So I thought that that was a very interesting structure or body, and that it was interesting. By then, I was interested in doing this ethnography, and I thought it was maybe an ideal example of absolute authority, where professors are of a certain area of knowledge have unquestionable authority about decisions, and don't even bother discussing them or explaining them. They just make them. So I basically engage her in the decision, and I also, since she didn't respond to my questions, I also engaged the members of those committees directly and asked them to engage in a discussion, which is what I think should happen in any academic institution. And I ended up my letter with a little provocation about the role that these professors, some of whom are have been preaching transdisciplinarity for decades, that they were finding themselves in the role of guarding the borders between areas of knowledge within the discipline. And my seminars, I was actually genuinely interested in talking to them about this, because my seminars, I call them the Joker seminars, because sometimes they produce very technical type of work, sometimes they produce very theoretical type of work. So they are kind of jokers. I think they could be both on the technology area or in the theory area. And I believe that's their main quality. That's why I don't understand all these labeling. Well, I understand it as a strategy of creating a hostile environment against me, but as nothing else. So then this whole operation happened through the departmental manager, because Mónica Ponce de León was supposed to be hands-off. She didn't have authority to discuss this. So it was the departmental manager that wrote to the members of the committees. I presume there were conversations, direct conversations with the heads of these committees. Directly from Mónica Ponce de León, but basically the whole thing was handled by the departmental manager to make it look as if it was hands-off. And then the members of the committee never responded to me, never engaged in any conversation, despite of my offer and despite the fact that I sent them additional material so they could make a serious consideration about the matter. And then I got these two messages from the departmental manager saying the History and Theory faculty has approved your ARC 560 seminar to fulfill the urban studies requirement. No explanation, no discussion whatsoever with any member of that committee. But at least, well, it went from a design seminar to an urbanism requirement. I had some more questions for them, but it's not important. The one that was more problematic was the technology subsector committee, which said that has provisionally approved your Act 423 seminar to fulfill a tech elective. Please note that this approval will be re-evaluated next year pending a reworking of the syllabus. Forrest, who is a colleague who I appreciate, who is an engineer, and I work often with him, will work with you to make sure that the seminar has sufficient technical content to differentiate it from a design seminar course. Now, Forrest is actually one of the members of that committee, and was at the time an assistant professor. This committee was headed by this guy there, who is Guy Nordenson, and he is the most senior professor in the technology subsector. The other member of the committee was also an assistant professor, so we have one full professor who has been dealing with technical content of the school for a long time, and two assistant professors. And what I found out, because even if these committees were not talking to me, you know, the laws of silence, the codes of silence always leak. And I found out that actually Guy Nordenson had blocked and was the one who had stated that my seminar didn't have sufficient content to differentiate it from a design seminar course. It so happens that Guy Nordenson is what I would say the epitome of the postmodern engineer. Is somebody who teaches courses on interpretation. I'm not joking. That's the title of one of his seminars. And he's interested in meaning and interpretation. So when a structural engineer starts talking about interpretation and meaning, I think that probably the school is in trouble. But that's my opinion. Nevertheless, it gives you an idea and connects to the previous session on the idea, the postmodern relativist ideology that was being imposed on the thesis courses that was also operating here. And so this particular character whose seminars are remarkably lacking technical content because they deal with meaning and interpretation, was precisely the one who blocked or who said that one of my seminars didn't have sufficient technical content to differentiate it from a design seminar. So I obviously reacted to this and said that I was, and he was actually bullying two assistant professors who were the other members of the committee, who I understand did not object to my seminar becoming a technology elective, and it had to be the dean herself that entered the conversation. There is, I don't have the evidence of this, but I know that the evidence is in the inbox from the departmental manager. So I kind of wrote back to Monica and I said that I was not going to accept Forrest, who actually I respect enormously and did not object for what he told me to my seminar becoming a technology elective, to tell me how to reorganize my syllabus. And so I said that I wanted to have, that I thought that there was a level of intellectual cowardice going on here of a senior professor hiding his authority behind the committee and over two assistant professors who didn't have his opinion. And then instead of himself being involved, he commissions one of the assistant professors to supervise the re-elaboration of the syllabus in my seminar. So I basically said this, I would like to compare in the faculty. I told the dean that I thought it would be necessary to compare the technical content of Guy Nordenson's seminars and my seminar on envelopes to see whether his seminars have effectively higher technical content as he is requesting from my seminar. But obviously neither Mónica Ponce de León nor Guy Nordenson, who I am sure was copied on this discussion, offer themselves to have a discussion, an open discussion in the faculty room about this matter. So the correspondence, this correspondence that I'm showing you, you can see that the dean of the faculty and the deputy dean of the faculty are copied because they were copied systematically in this correspondence. Was the correspondence that then Mónica Ponce de León used to accuse me of harassment. I don't know on what grounds, and you can see the full correspondence on chapter appendix A3. Probably, you know, intellectual cowardice is supposed to be a sign of harassment. But then, so basically, I ask through the departmental manager further clarification from the subsector committees. At no avail, because nobody responded to me. Not even one of these members of the committees responded to me, and I can excuse the two assistant professors in the technology department because assistant professors are in a kind of difficult position here. I think that the senior professor's attitude of not talking, not speaking keeping silence is much more problematic. So they never responded, any of them, in what appears to be some sort of application of a code of silence. And then I eventually resorted to simply record their silence for this ethnography as a sign, as an evident sign of non-collegiality and autocratic behavior of these different subsectors, which are not only adopting these codes of silence to avoid giving reasons about the decisions, but perhaps also protecting their territories of authority, of academic authority, instead of being ready to submit this authority for discussion. Perhaps they felt that the question threatened their authority over a certain domain of knowledge, but I believe that most likely a code of silence was required from them by the dean. I don't think that some of these people, some of whom I sincerely respect, enter this kind of Eichmann mode of operation, the banality of evil. I don't think they were voting in consciousness, and even more interestingly, through this process, through that correspondence that is supposed to be harassing, Dean Ponce de Leon accused me of non-collegiality. That's something that she wrote to me several times, and you can read it in the evidence that and this story then has an interesting follow-up, because later on in November 2020, when after my second letter of advice to the students regarding thesis, Marshall Brown, who is the professor who in fall 2018, as I showed you at the beginning, refused to give, was acting as Department of Graduate Studies, and refused to give credit for urbanism to my seminar, and didn't pass the question, or maybe he passed the question to the dean, and neither of them dealt with the matter, so the students had to find an alternative course to meet their credits and couldn't join my seminar. So the same guy who blocked this rubric regarding the credit of my seminar, and the same guy who received, if you remember, in the thesis assignment committee, one of the students who had chosen me as first choice of advisor ended up with his third choice, who was Marshall Brown. And apparently that was the only student who had manifested a kind of minor interest in Marshall Brown. Nobody else had named him as a suitable thesis advisor. So he writes to me, and after my letter to the dean and my letter to the students, and says, "We thought you'd respect your message, tone, and manner of delivery strikes this faculty member as having crossed well beyond the boundaries of collegiality." Okay, so he accuses me of non-collegiality. And then, even more interestingly, Guy Nordenson, the professor that we just spoke about, the kind of epitome of postmodern engineering, adds to that. Thank you, Marshall, for saying what I would have what I would have much better than I mean, he kind of supports Marshall Brown's complaint about my lack of collegiality when he was refusing to talk and to argue his decision and disclose what he was doing in his seminars, and compare it with the seminar that he was blocking for not having sufficient technical knowledge. So that those two were the only ones that spoke. So I used the fact that Guy Nordenson, who is actually a master at using the Fifth Amendment and not talk too much, but he came forward, and so I used the occasion to capture this relationship between the ideology of conversationalism that we saw being applied in the thesis protocols and probably in Guy Nordenson's interpretation focus and meaning focus on his seminars, with the code of silence that was applied to these subsector committees that were qualifying courses without giving any reason whatsoever, without being prepared to expose and discuss the arguments upon which they were making decisions. So that is basically how this conversationalist, relativist ideology operates, having the code of silence as the other side of the coin, much like Donald Trump, for example, is a fan of TV, but hates the newspaper. So he's on one side very conversational, very capable to engage and to discuss, but then is a master of applying the Fifth Amendment and the hush money when silence is required.